unfold. You've probably seen those incredible, almost sci-fi videos of the zombie ant fungus. You know the one? An ant, totally against its will, climbs up a leaf, bites down in a death grip, and then this stalk erupts from its head. It's a terrifying masterpiece of nature for sure. But what if I told you that this little horror story is actually the key to understanding a new, very real, and incredibly urgent threat to human health? A threat that's being trained right now by climate change itself.
Okay, so let's dive right into this. We're talking about one of nature's true puppet masters, the fungus called Ophiocordyceps unilateralis. Its relationship with carpenter ants isn't just parasitism. It's one of the most sophisticated and frankly terrifying examples of biological manipulation on the entire planet.
To really get what's happening here, we have to borrow this powerful idea from the evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, the extended phenotype. It sounds complex, but the idea is simple. It means the fungus's genes are literally being expressed through the ant's behavior. The ant isn't just sick, it's become a walking, climbing tool, basically an extension of the fungus's own body. The fungus is the one calling the shots. And this whole biological siege, it's a ridiculously precise 6-step process. It all starts when a single spore lands on an ant and just drills its way through the tough exoskeleton using enzymes. Inside, the fungus multiplies like crazy. Then comes the really wild part, the manipulation. It takes direct control of the ant's muscles, forcing it into that famous death grip on a leaf. And for the grand finale, a fruiting body erupts from the ant's head, raining down new spores to start the whole cycle over again.
Now, for years, scientists just assumed the fungus had to be invading the ant's brain, right? I mean, how else could it have that kind of control? But when they did these super high-resolution 3D scans, they found something absolutely startling. The fungus leaves the brain completely untouched. Instead, it forms this massive, interconnected network all throughout the ant's muscles, physically controlling the limbs like a puppeteer pulling the strings of a marionette. It keeps the pilot alive, but it completely hijacks the ship.
So, when you see this level of biological sophistication, it brings up a pretty chilling question, doesn't it? If fungi can pull off this kind of hostile takeover in insects, why not in us? What's stopping them from doing the exact same thing to humans?
Well, the answer, it turns out, is that for millions and millions of years, mammals, including us, have had a kind of superpower. It's this ancient defense mechanism, and it's all explained by something called the Casadevall Hypothesis.
This hypothesis is just beautifully simple. It basically argues that our warm-blooded nature, our high internal body temperature, evolved in part as a defense against the entire fungal kingdom. You see, most of the millions of fungal species on Earth are adapted to live in cooler temperatures. Our bodies create a thermal barrier, a hot, hostile environment that they just can't survive in. And this is the magic number, 37 degrees Celsius, or 98.6 Fahrenheit. This constant internal heat is our fortress, and it is incredibly effective. It filters out over 95% of all potential fungal pathogens on the entire planet. To them, our bodies are literally a furnace.
And this isn't some new trick we developed. The theory suggests this thermal fortress is the very reason our ancestors thrived after the asteroid hit 66 million years ago. The world got cold and dark, basically becoming a global compost heap where fungi flourished. Cold-blooded reptiles were incredibly vulnerable, but our warm-blooded mammalian ancestors with their built-in heaters were protected. It might be the very reason we're all here today.
Okay, so here's the crucial point. Our primary defense against an entire kingdom of life, an evolutionary advantage we have held for 66 million years, is now facing a threat it never, ever evolved to handle, a rapidly warming planet. And this brings us to the real-world consequence. A new superbug, Candida auris, a pathogen that looks like it's been personally trained by climate change itself to breach our thermal defenses.
You know, when Candida auris first appeared, its emergence was a complete mystery to epidemiologists. A typical pandemic starts in one place and then spreads, right? But this fungus just popped up, almost at the same time on 3 different continents. And when scientists looked at the genetics, they found the outbreaks weren't even related to each other. Different versions of the same fungus emerged independently. That could only point to one thing, some kind of global environmental trigger.
And the only hypothesis that fits all the facts is the one we've been building towards. For thousands of years, Candida auris was probably just a harmless fungus living in the environment somewhere. But as global temperatures started to rise, Different populations of it, all around the world, were independently put under this intense pressure to adapt to more heat. The warming world acted like a training ground, selecting for the strains that could survive higher and higher temperatures, until finally, they crossed the threshold. They became capable of living inside of us.
So, what happens when a fungus actually breaks through our defenses? Well, the reality is so serious that major health organizations like the CDC and the WHO are sounding the alarm. They're calling this a potential silent pandemic and labeling it an urgent threat to global health.
And here's the other part of the nightmare. It's not just heat-resistant, it's profoundly drug-resistant. The data on this is frankly terrifying. About 90% of C. auris infections are resistant to azoles, which are our most common first-line of defense antifungal drugs. A full 30% are resistant to amphotericin B, another key weapon. And now we're seeing resistance to echinocandins, which are supposed to be our last resort. We are literally running out of ways to treat this thing.
And the consequences of that are absolutely devastating. For vulnerable patients, usually in hospitals, who get an invasive Candida auris infection, and that means it gets into their bloodstream, the mortality rate is estimated to be somewhere between 30 and 60%. This isn't a minor infection. It is an incredibly lethal pathogen.
And that brings us to the final crucial takeaway here. We get fascinated by the science fiction threat of a zombie fungus, right? But the scientific reality is, in a lot of ways, much scarier. It's not a dramatic, visible takeover. It's an invisible, multi-drug-resistant superbug spreading silently through our hospitals. The monster isn't coming for our brains, it's coming for our healthcare systems. So we end on this thought. For 66 million years, our own body heat has been one of our greatest defenses, a biological fortress. And now, by heating the planet, we are systematically dismantling that fortress from the outside in. The question is no longer if new fungal threats will emerge, but what they will look like and if we'll be ready for them when they do.